Israel is continuously striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon and Syria. An explosion lit up the Beirut skyline in the early hours. Israel Defense Forces and its military conducted targeted raids against Hezbollah strongholds near border with Israel in southern Lebanon. An Israeli rocket struck a residential building in Damascus on Tuesday evening and killed over 7 people. The strike demolished the first 3 floors of a building in the Mezeh neighborhood east of Damascus. The debris covered the surrounding areas, crushing several cars. Ambulances and excavators arrived at the scene to rescue survivors and clear the wreckage. Israel is continuously bombarding Lebanon. Israeli strikes over the past 24 hours have killed 50 Hezbollah fighters, including 6 whom it described as senior commanders. Israeli Prime Minister has said that Hezbollah was weaker than it has been for many years. Benjamin Netanyahu said that apart from having killed the militant's longtime leader Hassan Nasrallah, Israel has also killed his successors. I'm going to go straight across to Gaurav Sawant, getting in more details on that story, joining us from Haifa right now at this point in time in Israel, which had been hit just a few days ago. Gaurav, do give us a sense of how things are at this point in time with an escalation that has been seen. Israel making that big announcement that not just Nasrallah but his successors, those who could be leading Hezbollah, have also been eliminated.
The situation is very tense here in Haifa. Even as we speak, there are multiple rockets that have been fired by the Hezbollah on Haifa city. It's a very important port city, and moments ago the Iron Dome system got activated to neutralize the incoming threat. We heard air raid sirens going off through the city while I was in midst of a recording of a show right over there over the Haifa Bay. Rockets were fired. So even as Israeli forces intensify their operations in southern Lebanon, and you've had cases where now there are multi-pronged offensive by the Israeli armed forces that are currently underway. So you have the fighter jets, Israeli Air Force fighter jets that are pounding locations of the Hezbollah, all their strongholds, whether it's very close to the border or all the way now up to the Awali River, Litani River, in and around Beirut, in Damascus, in Syria, closer to the Syrian-Lebanese border. So there are massive airstrikes that are on. Wave after wave of Israeli Air Force fighter jets are pounding Hezbollah strongholds. Like you pointed out, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said not only had they killed Hassan Nasrallah, Fouad Shukra, the entire leadership of Hezbollah, but even new leaders who are being appointed, they are also being neutralized, including Saifuddin and of course Suhail Husseini, who was the logistics chief. There are 4 more commanders who've been killed since, including tactical commanders. However, it is very important to keep in mind that as Israeli ground forces now carry out slightly deeper raids. In the past 3 days, there were very shallow raids, just clearing areas around the Israeli border, but now they're making deeper raids into Lebanon, and as they make these deeper raids, you have Hezbollah fighters who are targeting the Israeli forces. One special forces team of 202 parachute regiment that was targeted by the Hezbollah terrorists. One brave soldier, we are told he made the supreme sacrifice of his life. Some others have been injured in these operations, and this is where the Israeli Air Force and drones then target those Hezbollah strongholds. The Israeli government, the Israeli armed forces, they've issued a warning in Arabic asking people to clear the entire area all the way up to the Awali River. And if you see a map, so far it was the Litani River, which is the 30-kilometer buffer zone that Israel wants to create. But now they've asked for a much wider area to be cleared so that then they can take this battle against the Hezbollah in a multi-pronged way. Air attacks, ground attacks, and now attacks from the sea into that area which is controlled by the Hezbollah. So it's a multi-pronged offensive amidst calls for a ceasefire, and apparently there are some Hezbollah commanders, because they're on the back foot, because they're bleeding, because they're running out of ammunition and the replenishments are not happening, they're seeking a ceasefire. But Israel, while under pressure for a ceasefire, wants to maximize its advantage.
Gaurav, I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. We'll, of course, keep coming back to you for more on that big story that you're tracking very closely. Remember, Gaurav in Israel. I'm going to now, in fact, put this report out that my colleague Ashutosh Mishra has sent us. Take a look.
What you see right behind me is an apartment which was believed to be the residence of a Hezbollah top-ranking officer, and the Israeli Air Force carried out a strike and destroyed this entire apartment. All you see right behind me is the footprints. This entire structure was badly demolished. There is a fear and there is a trauma, there is a concern including in the civilians, after they're not sure where the bombing will take place next. This was believed to be one of the top ranking from the Hezbollah, and after the airstrike, most of these people left, and this leaving premises deserted. This is the south suburban of Beirut, and India today is at ground zero. Now, if I could take you 3 pictures, this entire apartment where there was a targeted attack, the strike, and if you see, the entire structure literally has turned into rubble. And that was the top floor, perhaps the top 2 floors were believed to be the residence of the Hezbollah ranking officer, and now all this area has turned into a rubble. And more there is a fear, particularly the south suburban has become a target area for the Israeli Air Force while they're advancing from the south to the northern part. Here the air strike continues. In Beirut suburban, this is Ashutosh Mishra for India Today.
All right, in fact, we have a series of reactions also coming in. Let's take a look.
This is a message to the people of Lebanon. Do you remember when your country was called the Pearl of the Middle East? I do. So what happened to Lebanon? A gang of tyrants and terrorists destroyed it. That's what happened. Lebanon was once known for its tolerance, for its beauty. Today, it's a place of chaos, a place of war. Israel withdrew from Lebanon 25 years ago, but the country that actually conquered Lebanon is not Israel, it's Iran. Iran, which finances and arms Hezbollah to serve Iran's interests at Lebanon's expense. Hezbollah has turned Lebanon into a stockpile of ammunition and weapons and a forward Iranian military base. We've degraded Hezbollah's capabilities. We took out thousands of terrorists, including Nasrallah himself, and Nasrallah's replacement, and the replacement of his replacement. Today, Hezbollah is weaker than it's been for many, many years.
אנחנו תקפנו את מפקדת המודיעין בביירות במרחב הדחיה. זו המפקדה של ראש מטה המודיעין אבו עבדאללה מורתדה. ויחד איתו אנחנו יודעים שהאשם ספי הדין היה. תוצאות התקיפה האלה נבדקות עדיין. חיזבאללה מנסה להסתיר את הפרטים. אנחנו נדע ונעדכן את הציבור.
هذا الاجتماع الكبير من قبل العدو الإسرائيلي ومعه أمريكا ودول غربية كلهم يحاولون أن يضغطوا علينا من أجل أن نخشى وأن نخاف لكننا لن نخشى ولن نخاف.
The conflict in the Middle East is getting worse by the hour, and our warnings about the horrific impacts of escalation keep coming to pass. Every airstrike, every missile launch, every rocket fired pushes peace further out of reach and makes the suffering even worse for the millions of civilians caught in the middle. That is why we cannot and will not give up on our calls for an immediate ceasefire both in Gaza and Lebanon, the immediate and unconditional release of hostages, and the immediate life-saving aid to all those who desperately need it. And that is why we cannot and will not give up on our calls for irreversible action for a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine.
So first of all, I did see these reports that Hezbollah now wants a ceasefire. And
delinked from Gaza.
Yeah, delinked from Gaza, that they just want a ceasefire on its own terms. And I think my initial response to this is, where have they been for a year? For a year, the world has been calling on Hezbollah to stop the attacks across the border into Israel. And for a year, Hezbollah said they would not do it unless there was a ceasefire in Gaza. They linked the two when the international community was saying, stop the fighting. And Israel was saying, if Hezbollah stopped attacks across the border, Israel would stop its attacks in response against Hezbollah. So for a year, you had the world calling for this ceasefire. You had Hezbollah refusing to agree to one. And now that Hezbollah is on the back foot and is getting battered, suddenly they've changed their tune and want a ceasefire. I think it's not surprising given the situation they find themselves in.
I think the idea of allowing a genocidal, theocratic, unstable dictatorship that is desperate to avoid being overthrown by its own people, to develop nuclear weapons, is about the most dangerous and irresponsible thing that the world could ever allow. And if Israel were to stop that genocidal, theocratic, unstable government from acquiring nuclear weapons, it would be a gift by the Jewish state to humanity.